FT Live builds on this legacy by bringing you global events on business-critical issues. From the rapid rise of artificial intelligence to economic shocks and geopolitical risk, our events examine the disruptive forces facing decision-makers in today's complex world.
You never know when the opportunity may come. Just be ready.
Football is for everybody.
The only way you're going to break through that noise is innovation, and the only way you innovate is by tapping into different talent pools.
The only way you kill an idea is with a better idea.
Hard questions.
Why? Why did you agree to this?
Intelligent answers.
In a crisis, you really have to focus on what you can control.
Crucial connections.
Engage with leaders, acquire essential insights, gain an edge with FT Live.
Everyone, welcome to the FT Nikkei Tea House again. It's lovely to be out of the sunshine. Lovely to see you all here in this lovely and cooling space. We've got an amazing panel here today to talk about one of the biggest topics that I think everyone knows, right? I've had 40 meetings in 4 days. Feels like 4 years sometimes, but it's coming to the end now, and we're getting to that day on Thursday where we can start to think about what we've learned, what we've heard from everything else, and there's only been one topic of conversation on everyone's lips, which is about AI. Every conversation starts and ends with AI. A lot of it's around AI creativity and storytelling, which is our session today, so we'll get some of the best minds to come talk to us about it now. So I'd like to introduce to the stage Sir Martin Sorrell. Please come to the stage. We have Steve Plimsoll, who's Steve...
Shall I come and sit next to you?
You come sit next to me. Oh, yes, sir. Steve Plimsoll, Chief Strategy Officer at Humane. Amit Jain, who is the founder of Luma AI. And lastly, Hannah Elsucker, who is the founder of Firefly for Enterprise at Adobe, and many other job titles which I have forgotten. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone here. As a journalist, this is like an incredibly exciting panel because everyone's pretty much got news here to talk about. This is like one of those moments in time, I think, in 2025, the advertising industry. People will look back and remember this. This is the year where people started getting real with AI, and particularly about all the things that are applied, the applications, the real life, the reasons that things will change rather than just talked about things. So first of all, actually, Steve, I'm going to come to you. I was going to...
No, go ahead.
If that's okay, Martin, I'm just going to Steve. Because Steve, you had a world first announcement only 10 minutes ago on the main stage in the Palais. Do you want to talk to us about that first of all? Because I think that will set up quite a lot of the other discussions.
And I will. And I'll start by thanking Martin for what, as I'm calling it, the international premiere of Humane Create, which is a partnership that Humane has done with Luma to basically democratize and change the entire future of creativity with AI, whether that be in-game advertising, whether it's cinematic film, entertainment. We think we've got something really interesting, and Cannes not going to be the same next year.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're not going to leave deep. Come and tell us what exactly is. So Humane Create, we hear a lot about different products being launched. And what makes this stand out? What are you going to bring to the table, which is going to be sort of revolutionary here?
So I suppose the two key things bringing Humane and Luma together. Yeah. Humane, we're coming at it from the full stack AI. So we've got the data centers, the chips, the NVIDIA announcements that we've had recently, the cloud capabilities, the models. So from that perspective, it's really interesting on the models. We've got world-leading Arabic language, LLMs. So we've got international benchmarks that put us at pretty much at the top, only second to Google from an Arabic language perspective. Wow. We're going to embed those into those video models. So we're going to be able to create really relevant, culturally correct video, three-dimensional cinematic content for the Middle East. The Middle East is one of the most traditionally proud and organized countries or regions in the world. Every time you ask a Western model to create an image or a video, they get the dress wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So how do we fix it? How do we bring culture and tradition into the graphics and imagery of LLM models, not just language? So it's not just about Arabic, it's about Islam, it's the region, it's everything like that, and nutrition. And then when we be able to deploy that in models like Ray 2, into Dream Machine on the B2C side, the ability to deploy at speed is incredible. And I think the key thing there for us is this is the future of what we're calling interactive entertainment. We think that's the best term for this, because it's a mix of where gaming is on one side and sort of feature content is on the other. And we see those two smashing together. And the ability to real-time change and create three-dimensional gaming worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
Personalized.
Personalized, hyper-personalized.
Exactly, and branded.
Yeah.
So you're walking through a room, you turn left, all of a sudden you're in a Barbie environment. You turn right, you're in G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
We can do that at an individual one-to-one personalized level at real speed on any infrastructure. It really is going to change things.
And you're launching with Lumina, and naturally I'll come to you now to talk about. So explain a bit about Lumina, how it works. I was actually playing with the Dream Machine. Luma, sorry. Lumina. I was only playing with Dream Machine earlier, which is their product. You can go online at the moment. And I was tinkering with it, and you get to a point where we hit the paywall, and actually what you explained to me just then is, I thought that was just a teaser, so to get me to pay the money or whatever. Yeah. It's because of GPUs. You haven't got the capacity to offer more than that, right? So tell us about the company, and obviously, please correct your mind.
So at Luma, the goal is to build intelligence for creative work. Currently, the majority of the investment in the world is going towards LLMs, coding agents, which is absolutely excellent because they are very productive. But for the audience here, and for people who are doing creative work, we have to we have to reach another level of intelligence that is necessary for visual understanding, generation, and finally, how do we create things that are, engaging to watch? How do we create things that are really something people would want to watch? So our solution to that problem is what we call multimodal intelligence. Being able to train models that learn from everything we humans perceive all day, images, video, audio, the way we live in our world. That's how we need to train AI. So Luma is building the mathematical foundations, the research foundations, the infrastructure, and the models that is necessary to bring about that era of AI. So this partnership with Humane, so the point you were making just now, video, the demand for video is absolutely voracious. There is no amount of video that can be created by people that won't be consumed. I mean, of course, you can make terrible things and then nobody will watch it. But even if they're mildly interesting, the demand for video is just voracious. Now, if you think about what generating a video takes from infrastructure perspective, that surpasses LLMs by a very large margin. Currently, we run inference. So there's a very, very clear way to think about it. If you're asking an LLM a question, it will write out a paragraph for you. That would be about 200 tokens, maybe 500 tokens if it's a long question, or a research thing, 1,000 tokens, right? A 10-second video easily surpasses 200 to 500,000 tokens, right? So the demand for video is insane. The demand or the compute necessary to serve it is crazy. So this partnership is the essential solve to this rock and a hard place constraint, that how do we find the infrastructure and build the infrastructure to serve this future and to build out this future. So that's why I'm incredibly excited about it.
What's amazing to me is that a year ago people were talking about this sort of technology is sort of so far ahead in the future. One day we'll be able to. I was on your website earlier, 3 prompts. I was making my own video basically. I was a pirate ship on the sea with some ghosts behind it, and suddenly it was it's incredible.
Was it any good?
It was incredibly good. Yeah, it was. It's very good.
Even though you had done it.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I put 3 words. Use the words. So the words. He's the technology.
You made the prompts.
Yeah. It is. The prompts do help, but it is incredible. It moves at such speed, doesn't it? This sort of stuff. Yeah.
So I think that there's actually a very interesting phenomenon on that one. Once you have infrastructure built for training models, for data, everything like that, the incremental improvements, which to the outside world look like revolutions, because we operate in powers of 2. Right, each model is at least a power of 2 bigger or more capable than the one that came before. It took us about 2.5 years to build out the first infrastructure for video training, and it's extremely non-trivial because the technology didn't exist before. Everything from the encoders to the data systems, when we train the models, the traffic that goes through our training clusters amounts to about 1 to 2% of the entire internet's traffic. So building those kind of systems takes an immense amount of effort, but once you got it, you iterate. And like, we can build out models every 2 months, really. We don't release them because they're like, research models, but we are able to build out models very quickly, and it's going to go faster than people think right now. You might have fatigue from like, a lot of announcements and things that are going, but the underlying current is the increase in capabilities. So if you come back to this 6 months later, it's going to be able to do things that you never thought it was going to be.
Do you have IP issues, Amit?
Our own IP, you mean?
No, not your own IP. Other
Taking other people's IP.
No, so basically what we do is we offer full indemnity to every customer. And we have
So you're
tools,
working on an indemnity basis.
Absolutely. And we have tools and infrastructure set up so that like, our generations, our outputs do not violate IP. I think that is the most essential part of it that like, customers should care about, the companies who own IP should care about, that generative models do not generate.
From a technical point, do you insure against that, or do you?
We try our best.
Okay.
We absolutely try our best. But as I mentioned, it's the internet. And like, but we make every effort possible to, for this data to be not there. But the thing to remember about that is it's impossible for one person to ever watch all this data. It is not possible. So you build systems and you continue to improve them until like, you get to a point where that data is just not there in your training set.
Adobe does care about IP a lot, as we know. And so, and you also, to bring the connection down the line, have had a partnership with Luma announced, 2 days ago?
Yes.
And that was around Firefly. So take us through Firefly and how that's working for Adobe and how you're bringing technology like Lumina, but many other partners in.
So we're in a once-in-a-decade tectonic shift at the intersection of creativity, AI, and marketing. And I think this is a really interesting time, still early innings, trying to figure out what are the use cases and where do we scale and have ROI. But really important to obviously the Adobe family when we launched Firefly, which is our multiple modality suite of products in 2023, is the heart and soul of our company is the creators, the creative professionals, and the marketing professionals that use our products. And so we wanted to come out with a commercially safe set of models. And what that means to us, just to geek out for a second, is at the data layer.
You're in the right place.
In computer science, we used to say like garbage in, garbage out. So for us, the data layer and what was going into the models is really important. And we talk a lot about it as a nutrition label, right? Thinking about what's inside the model. So for us, every single piece of data that went in, every image, every video clip, every audio clip was a licensed piece of data. So we have rights to train from the creator themselves. We definitely have compensated those creators in the process, and that was a really important strategic decision that we made to bring out our models. We have image, again, video, vector, design. I'm losing track of all the modalities we have. And that, again, most agencies, brands really care, Humane, really care about the commercial safety aspect on the other side. And of course, we are also concerned about harm and bias. So when we think about a model that's general and for the globe, we do want people represented. And we have, again, humans, human ingenuity, that do a lot of prompt testing, going in, thinking about what the prompts give us back, and if that's representative or biased. This is a very large part of our process as well. So we're really focused on that, and obviously everything is increasingly moving as quickly as possible.
Do you worry about at Adobe the growth of these models like Luma and Runway and Minimax? I mean, isn't that to some extent a competitive threat?
Interesting you asked that, because about a month ago we announced that we brought partner models into the ecosystem. And I think this is a really important opening of our ecosystem for the creative community. Actually, it was a customer request, which is at different parts of my workflow, maybe in ideation. I'm ideating on a video storyboard for a long form feature film. I'd love to have access to multiple models because they do slightly different things, slightly different controls. I still want to stay in Adobe product because where I do my post is in Premiere Pro, and we love that. So we responded to that request, and we brought in partner models like Luma, like Google's Veo, to have that Runway's a partner as well, so that we could give the professional community that choice. Another thing we do, though, is in order to enable you or anyone else to understand what the nutrition label is, we have something called the Content Authenticity Initiative. It's an open source forensic watermarking, if you will, and it will tell you where was this produced, where was this image produced, by which model, what date, and what alterations happened. Did you touch it in Photoshop? Did you touch it in Premiere Pro? That's a great manifest.
Yeah.
And then it's your choice. If you want to traffic that particular piece, or you're not comfortable, your legal team's not comfortable, and
But
they want to
wouldn't
do something
Shantanu
else.
prefer to own Luma?
Own which? Own
Luma or Runway.
Trying to do deals on stage.
I mean,
Sir,
I'm trying to stir it up a bit. But,
Martin, but let's come to you first.
he's trying to cut me off. He's cutting me off.
He saved me. He saved me.
Let's come back to you. You can do the deals later on. That's why we have bars down the road to do that. It's not on stage with the FT, please. But Martin, okay, so you've been here for a few days now, right? Well,
Yeah.
You've heard probably so many conversations on this, and you've
A few.
few. Tell me what is your big takeaway from this week in terms of? I mean, you've been talking about this space for so long. You know, it's why you set up S4 pretty much.
I don't think people in the agency business really have clocked what's happening. I think there's a general feeling about, I did a thing with the BBC last week called Media Show, and the questioner said, is this the end of the golden era? And will AI kill the advertising industry? and look, it may be the end of a golden era as we knew it, or as I knew it for the last 30, 40 years, certainly since the 1980s, globalization, internet, smartphone. This is probably more fundamental. I think it does change the model, and I think to your point, or your question, the holding companies, there's only one holding company that's performing at the minute out of 6, or maybe 1.5 if you include Havas at a smaller scale, but certainly just one, I think. They have the right strategy, leadership strategy, structure. I think this is a signal, what we're hearing from Humane and Luma, from Adobe and others, is a signal that the model has to change. And there are probably, like in media planning and buying, which is not covered by this. So I mean, the stuff that Luma does with Humane can be linked to a media planning and buying model, rather like Mark Zuckerberg said last, with Advantage Plus and PMax, Performance Max at Google. You can link that to a content creation model and have an end-to-end solution. That's our view, the way that it will go. For small and medium-sized enterprises, what Mark Zuckerberg is focused on at the moment, but he will go up the funnel to enterprise. And the model essentially will become a fully automated model. I mean, I've had some conversations here with the platform people who do not speak to the Financial Times, who deliberately keep themselves to themselves. These are the big thinkers inside the platforms, and they are really focused on enormous upheaval that LLMs, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever, will cause to the traditional search model.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is a huge change. Yeah. And it has repercussions not only in the way that we do things, with the way we create, we plan, we buy, but also the number of people who are going to do it, because it will be less. There's no doubt in my mind, and I think a number of other people. So this is a revolution.
That's going to happen.
But I do think one thing to say, I'm not pessimistic about it, I'm optimistic about it, because I think, in a world where digital is dominant, it's 70% of the market, where data is, the new oil in a sense, where faster, better, cheaper is really important, and where unitary organizations like an NVIDIA perform more effectively because of democratization of knowledge through LLMs. I think it's a huge opportunity.
I think it's so interesting. One point, the first time I've been hearing people talk about the future of, even with Google, Google could be left behind. This idea you Google something, that doesn't happen in 10 years. You don't Google something, you go to your agents and you ask your agent for help and all the rest of it. And companies like Humane and Luma and Adobe, they are the new sort of gatekeepers into this.
Well, I think there's one other thing that's happening which I think is important to understand about Humane. Humane represents a third force. You have basically the US and China in AI, and what's happening in Saudi, and indeed, to be fair, in the region, is it's a third force.
It's a central corridor. It's an AI corridor. We're able to move inference all over the world. We can go up and down. We can go left and right. And we have an ambition to be sort of number 3 in the world. How do we, if the US is going to lead and China's going to be behind it, how do we be number 3?
Yeah.
How do we run that?
So tell us that's the PIF ambition, the PIF ambition is to really get behind this as a sort of driving force for the region.
Humane was created to be a global first, sovereign by design brand.
Yeah.
We have an analogy which we're using, and I think it helps people understand a little bit of what we're trying to do and what the Crown Prince has sort of done by creating Humane. In the same way that Aramco made Saudi Arabia a global leader during the fossil fuel era, Saudi Arabia wants to use Humane to be a global leader in the AI era.
Yeah.
Okay. Tokens are now the new oil, as we just heard.
Yeah.
Every message in, every message out is tokens. If my cost per compute for each token is lower than anybody else, and I can deliver it as fast, and we're delivering tokens out of data centers in Saudi, that from the US, with the queries happening in the US, it's coming to us in Saudi, we're responding, and we're getting feedback that the response times, the latency, is actually faster to us through our servers than it is through data centers directly in the US. Right? That's revolutionary.
Yeah.
So if we can offer the lower cost, we can offer the speed, we can put the models in there, it's incredible we're going to see coming out of it. And Humane's about being a world leader, but it's also about being full stack. It's not just about being infrastructure.
Yeah.
Our launch with...
You got the data centers, you got the...
Exactly. Our launch with Trump was very much infrastructure focused. We announced all of the sort of the deals with the chip manufacturers and other things. But the hint is in the name. Okay? The reason we believe Humane is the name for the company is that humanity and AI are totally interlinked. Right? You can't have one without the other. For me, there's who spent half my career in advertising media and a relatively large part of that working for Martin, WPP organizations. We used to talk years ago about magic and logic. Okay? Everyone talks about being replaced or being made redundant by AI. Okay? We believe you're going to be made redundant without AI. So how do we automate the processes? How do you get from A to Z? Today you get from A to Z through a standard process. That process was designed during Mad Men, 1950s, media trafficking and modeling. You don't start with the process. What's the destination you want to go to? What's the new process for the agencies, for the clients, for the advertisers, for the publishers? In the way we can now launch and publish and do things, we can go so fast with being able to put real-time messaging in front of a person in microseconds. How does a legal team approve that creative?
Yeah.
Well, they don't, because you're building the creative as the person's doing it. So there's a whole different world of how you put that together. And I think that we've got to look at AI amplifying humanity. Okay? And for me, it's one of again, it's an interesting play, and it's the quote I love. It's Steve Jobs' quote about the crazy ones. AI is trained to think in a certain way. It does all the things the same way. Everyone's talking about, well, if everyone's using AI, if everyone's using models to generate content, we'll all end up with the same content.
Yeah.
That's why I need the crazy ones in the agency still to exist to tell the AI what it wouldn't normally do to create something interesting. That's the magic.
That's the point about creativity, which I really want to come to actually now, because there is a sort of dystopian future, which is like, to your point about hyper-personalization at scale, which is fantastic in the marketer's dream. But if it's the same boring ad to a billion people, that's not necessarily greatly creative, is it? That's the point, I think.
Well, that's where the human creative differentiation. I mean, James Quincy at Coca-Cola made that point on a call I was on, must be about 6 months ago. He said, if everybody's hyper-personalizing, how do you differentiate? And that made him worry. He repeated it on a similar call just recently. And it's a legitimate concern, but I think the thing to understand is that advertisers are faced, for example, we talked about in the session in the theatre, the Cannes Theatre just now. If you're in the automotive category and you have a Chinese EV being produced for $10,000, AV, by BYD, or $25,000 they announced for their EV a few days ago, and you're GM or BMW, who we work for, what do? So you have to reduce your create costs you have to be more efficient, you have to be more effective to maintain your media budgets. Because if you're a CMO, you know that the CEO is going to come to you at some point in time and say, those fintech platforms, you know, that are taking down the branch banking operations, or the EVs, the Chinese EVs are taking down the gas guzzler manufacturers of yore, you're going to have to become more efficient and create costs as a proportion of media. No, we had conversations here in Cannes where create costs are 30% or 15% of media budgets. When I started in the industry, we were paid 15%, 10% for basically for creative and 5% for media. Today, those fees are equivalent to about 10%, and you could allocate 5% to creative, say, and 5% to media. It's crazy that clients are still, because of inefficiency, because of virtualization.
We're trying to do the same thing with new technology. We're not changing.
Yeah, I mean, we showed a Puma ad, very controversial. It's not going to win awards at Cannes. But instead of being multi-million-dollar budget, you know, in an exotic location and taking 2 or 3 months, it literally is done in 12 days. And its cost is $200,000. We've done ads which we haven't been able to show. They're private ads for GM. And we're in a program with them for these are pure agentic ads. So these are pure automated ads. And we've done product launches for automobile companies, and they are very, very fuddy-duddy about, you know, the lighting's got to be perfect, the reflection's got to be perfect, the motion's got to be perfect. So agentic production now, and you saw it on the runway, on the Luma video that we put up on stage, the quality is amazing now. And this is
the video is now live on the website for anyone online.
It's incredible.
It's good. I mean, when you come into the conversation, do you think about creativity, or do you just think about efficiency? How can I make the best product using the technology I have? Or do you think, how am I going to make the most creative product? How do I work with the human beings to develop this sort of stuff?
I think a lot about what we're going to consume, what everybody's going to watch. So my mental model of this, like, you know, where we're going with this is there's two things happening to the internet, and one Martin alluded to, which is that internet is kind of becoming zero-click, right? We're not clicking around and going on websites to websites and websites, things like that, right? Like, you ask an LLM, you get an answer. The second thing that is happening to the internet, and it's actually more insidious because, you know, if you're older, you wouldn't notice it. People are watching multiple hours of video a day, and their mode of access of news, education, entertainment, obviously, is becoming video, right? The younger you go, the higher that becomes. So the substrate of the internet for machines will be, you know, code and LLMs, and for humans, that will be video. So when I think about this, like, you know, what is the logical conclusion of that? The logical conclusion of that is we are going to have to create, like, you know, at least, like, let's say every person on the planet watches an hour of video a day, right? And we want it to be personalized. We want it to, like, you know, the stories to be as close to them as possible. So the limit of that is we will have to create 8 billion hours of video a day in order to serve that demand, right? 8 billion hours of video a day.
And none of that's all the banner ads you see everywhere.
Right.
This doesn't include that.
Real content.
Right. There's nothing in there. So, and this is not just like, you know, they're watching Netflix. This is, they're asking these models questions about, like, hey, how do I do this? Or teach me how to tie a tie.
Put a shelf up,
Everything like that.
But you're basically saying people will communicate through video.
They already are. The whole premise of Snap, right?
So it won't be
TikTok
text, it will be video.
Exactly.
And there's statistics that say, you know, video is 9 times more engaging than a still. I mean, this is a fact of
Absolutely.
life. So whether it's an explainer video, and we're not even talking about short drama, everything needs to be video. Nobody wants to really read anymore.
I mean, if you just think about education for a second,
fair.
right? The amount of information you can learn by just watching someone do Khan Academy. Why is it such a revolution? Because they just show you what is happening. And they're not even like making videos of the things, they're writing on the whiteboard. Human brain is just so conditioned to be able to absorb that information better than that. So coming back to your question, I think a lot about that. And I think a lot about, like, you know, what is the role, or like how do we make that, first of all? So the first part of that is obviously efficiency, infrastructure, and those scaling, right? But the second part is, this won't be done without the involvement of humans. It's not like, this dystopia where computers are generating and you're watching slop and like, your eyes are bulging, this kind of stuff. I hope I painted a picture.
Thursday night for me.
What I think about is the role of creatives is going to be, they change from becoming editors and like, people who are finessing every pixel to world builders. What they do is they design the worlds, right? Like, so if it's entertainment, they design the characters that they're going to show up in that television show. They design the environments. They also kind of design the storyline, like, okay, this is what's going to happen. But then you let intelligent models like Luma's play them out, right? And the person who's watching them can say, like, okay, but what if, like, I don't like her, kill her, right? Like, things like that.
Change the angle, switch the background, add a backpack.
And the show can go on from that point on, but the human role.
I mean, terrifying for anyone who's got creativity and IP in that TV show. But yes, maybe go from there.
So this is actually also not a novel concept. This is what our directors do today.
Yeah.
Right? Directors like Steven Spielberg, they're world builders. They imagine whole new worlds where, like, the laws of physics are different, the appearances are different, the characters operate a certain way. And then they play out one of those stories in the first and then second prequel, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That's how everyone will operate. And then even if you're thinking about ads, what we will do is we'll establish these, like, constraints. We'll say, like, okay, I want to showcase this car. I want it to be, like, shown in urban environments, but that's about it, right? Like, or show in urban environments and for people who are quite sporty. That's the characters that should appear. Mm-hmm. And then every person who sees it, if you're seeing it in Riyadh, it looks very different because, it's in the streets of Riyadh. If you're seeing it in San Francisco, you're driving on the Golden Gate Bridge. And the models are able to do that. So that's how I think about personalization. It is going to happen through world building.
Hannah, talk about creativity now. I mean, and just talk about the way, as you see the journey of all the different tools that you have, the technology you're unveiling, what are the limits? I mean, when you look forward, this is like hyper-realistic already, but it'll get to the point where we just can't tell the difference, can we?
One of Adobe's missions is creativity for all.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, Sir Martin, if I may disagree with you, I don't think there will be less jobs. I actually think with every technology shift, new roles and new skills and new jobs are created. And so, in a sense, with AI, and I agree with Amit, a lot of the drudgery is removed. So the pixel pushing of resizing a banner or, reframing videos, rekeying them frame by frame, that was tedious manual work, and it was actually eating a lot of the budgets that were happening. I think actually, ironically, with AI being adopted, human ingenuity and human taste becomes paramount. That's the difference. We don't need more of the same. And there's, forgive me, a lot of bad creative out there right now without AI.
Yeah, human beings.
I'd be amazed by that. But AI will just accelerate the ability to create uninteresting, unengaging creative. That will be where it is. Where you will see the head and shoulders above is with taste. And what I really like is that AI actually lowers the floor for entry. So lots of new narratives, lots of new ad campaigns will be made because it's essentially a search engine for your imagination. If you used to be able to sketch 4 characters and 4 storylines, now you can do 100, literally, in a day, and then vector off of that. Like, I work with lots of artists now who are using it in their process, they're rethinking their processes, but they're still they're the creative director, they're the design director, and they just have a really competent assistant, and who doesn't want more interns, right? Helping and doing the grunt work. I think that's amazing. Yeah. And it also allows us to be creative.
I want to come back to you on this employment thing. I don't buy that. So on personalization at scale, yes, maybe, more jobs. On visualization and copywriting, no way. The stuff that Amit's doing with Luma, that Humane will do with him, mean fewer people, faster, more efficient, and I think better. I think they'll drive it. Media planning and buying. There are 250,000 people employed in the media planning and buying. You don't need them. It's all done algorithmically. There's $1 trillion of spend. I mean, in the investment industry, Blackstone on its own manages, I think, 13 trillion. We're a 1 trillion industry, and that's a minute. 700 billion is digital, 300 billion is traditional. There is no way that needs to be planned by a 25-year-old media planner and buyer who mentally can't come up with the permutations. The algorithm can.
Yeah.
That buyer then, there'll be fewer of them, will look at it and think. But, so my view is, at the end of the day, there was a famous economist called John Maynard Keynes, who people at
Yes,
the Financial
of course,
Times
yeah.
will know. 1930, I think it was, he wrote a pamphlet on the impact of automation. And what he said at the end was, we'll have more holidays. He was 100 years too early. We're going to have more holidays. We'll be able to spend more time in Cannes, right? But there's going to be fewer, in our industry, I can't talk to others, there's going to be fewer people without a single doubt.
Can I?
Sorry.
I'm going to
Make it,
We can
make
keep
your
going.
position clear, Martin.
I think I'm going to say I want to agree with Martin on this, but I'm going to come from a slightly different angle. So, Humane's a brand new company. Okay? We've just been created, but we have a lot of financial backing. We're carving together some of the best parts of Saudi Arabian capabilities to create sort of synergies and what's there. We've got a massive ambition. I'm, at the moment, acting as the Chief Marketing Officer as well as Chief Strategy Officer. The entire company wants to be AI first. If we're going to build and sell AI, we should be using it ourselves.
Of course, yeah.
So I've got an ambition to be agency-less.
Yeah.
Or even agency-light.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how does that work? I don't want my marketing department to be more than maybe 2 or 3 people. And probably most of them are going to be comms people who have to deal with press responses, because I don't want a chatbot responding to every bit of PR.
I mean, that's
maybe I do.
It'd be my bot talking to their bot. It'd be like, you know, so that's the future of journalism and PR. Then.
But that's the interesting bit, is how does... Every CMO is looking at the future of their organisation size. They're looking at the future of what do they do internally. We were doing this with Unilever 15 years ago, of how do you transform the structure. That's already started. That shift in moving in-house is moving. And this is just going to amplify. This is going to make it happen.
So media planning, to your point, who knows more about the oil industry than people at Aramco? So, you know, with all due respect to the consultancies, the agencies...
You shouldn't be talking.
So, no, buying might be different. Might be that's an algorithmic thing that you can do with the platforms, you know, which there are 6, basically. But I agree 100%.
Maybe just one parallel.
Please
I
do.
think history tells us that with every technology shift, perhaps in the short term, the value pool and the skill set changes, but in the macro, it expands. I'll give you 2 from creative. The camera in the 1800s, right? Delacourt, a French painter, declared paintings dead. Clearly not true, and a Cambrian explosion and more access and more entry. Photoshop, the launch of digital marketing, the internet, and Photoshop. Actually, creatives were really angry with us, saying, you're killing our craft, you're putting us out of work. We can see, like, actually exploded into a brand new set of jobs. And I'm not saying in the short term we won't have some resets and changes. The value pool will shift, and it behooves us all to lean in and learn, reskill ourselves to join. But I think you'll see some familiar adoption that's efficiency driven, and you will see innovative new things that happen.
I think it's a really interesting point. Look, if I look at Adobe, Oracle, and Salesforce, they have, with all due respect, it's the law of big numbers. These are big software companies that have to grow because they're listed at a significant rate. You know, we deal with the sales forces. It's very high pressure sales force, high commission rates for the sales force to sell in, inflexible programs with huge coverage. We talk to the clients. The clients are now being offered. It's really interesting, actually. I think the software companies are going to have to adapt exactly the same way as the agencies. You're going to have to be, with all due respect, more flexible. You're going to have to let clients take a piece of Adobe's software here.
You choose what you want when you want. It's going to
exactly.
Open ecosystem, and that's why you asked me why we let other models in.
Because you're being undercut,
I think
like we are, by people who are building more flexible systems.
I think industries are undoubtedly mutual. I do want to come to the audience, because if there's any questions from the audience, because I have contractual obligations to ask you. Because we can let this conversation run. It's really interesting. So I'm not doing it for that reason. But sir, you've got a question there.
Thank you. Fascinating conversation. I'm very skeptical about a lot of the debate happening around AI, because I think it's a lot of the focus has been around making a process faster, a process that is probably broken in the first place. And talking on strategy, I'm a media planner.
Can I have your name and where you're from, sir?
My name is Michele. I work for Together. We're a B2B agency. My question is, how does the ecosystem adjust to actually help buyers, whether they're consumer buyers or B2B buyers, make decisions? And I don't think that engines are just going to scale up millions or billions of pieces of content is going to change, for now at least, how humans are going to come up with a decision, whether it's a corporate decision or it's a consumer decision. And I think these two things are massively in contrast. And I'm just not seeing a lot of the debate happening on that point.
If I start about modern, you'll have more on that, but and it's really the simplest. You talk about process and the changing of process and where we need to work. Right now, I can put the most advanced AI I want for media planning, for creating real-time graphics, things like that. But if my governance process internally requires everything to go through my legal department before I can traffic it out somewhere, guess what? I've got all these processes with all these stops. You've got to chuck the whole of that out the window and go, how do we restart again? That's not easy to do. In most organizations, and all of digital transformation, for the last 25 years we've been doing digital transformation, the top level executives are driving forward because they want AI in their business. They want to have cost out. They want to be different. The bottom level of the organization, the young, the students, the people straight out of school, have been natively using these technologies anyway, and are going, why can't I do what I was doing at school because you guys don't have the software to do it, or you've blocked my computer using it. They move at rapid speed. The middle layer lags behind. And the transformation is that middle layer. How do you get those enthusiastic, sort of curious younger ones to go, well, how would you rewrite the way of doing this? If you're starting from a brief to trafficking, tell me what you can do. We've got to change from scratch. And that's where both the agencies are looking how they do that, and then the clients, the CMO teams as well, and they have to do it together because it's a huge change.
Yeah, I'm not with you on what you said, because I think, with trained agents, AI agents, a lot of the decision making or the option taking, you'll give a prompt, you'll say this is what I need when I need it, and you'll get it. I mean, for more mundane purchases, certainly so. But we were with a client who runs a division, a separated division of a big package goods company, and he used the analogy of buying a bike. He's a keen cyclist, and they're buying a bike, about a $15,000 bike, I think he was talking about. And that's a more sophisticated, but again, you'll get an agent that is being trained, depending on your prompt, and the accuracy of your prompt and the effectiveness of the prompt, or continual interrogation with prompts, I think you will get a quite, I mean, I know, without going into the gory detail, particularly on a Financial Times platform, there are people here at Cannes every year from the major platforms who do not speak publicly, won't speak to Dan, but are the brains of these platforms, and we get access to them because of the agency relationship. They are deeply concerned about what LLMs like Gemini, like ChatGPT do to the search process, and what they do. Google has got a dilemma. Why was Google apparently slower? Well, existential threat, DeepMind, what was his name? Jeffrey Clinton, right? But one of the founders of DeepMind, who left and went to a university in Canada, Toronto, I think, because he was worried about the existential threat. So there was that. Hallucination was another one. But also it was, if I launch this thing, what happens to the search? So I think the process is changing, and I pick it up this week. I have not seen the tech companies, even the established ones, in such a state of questioning. I mean, just came away from the CEO of one country of a platform, and he said every morning, it's really interesting, he said every morning I get up and I'm in an agitated state. He'd been in that company for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it was. Never before, when he got up every morning, did he worry about. So I think you've got to think about this being highly disruptive, potentially. It may not, you may be right, it maybe is not. But the mindset has got to be, I could be taken apart. There's got to be an insecurity here that that is really important.
And I think we could have a whole hour, I think, on agentic AI and how in the future, how you're going to juice those results and whether or not how you get those, the answers that marketers want them to be as you search those. But we can't, unfortunately, do that today. Hopefully, we'll be at this time next year, and no doubt we'll have a whole hour on agents and agentic AI and how that's changing the marketing industry, and whether or not Google is toast or not, because that's a serious
not toast.
case.
It's not going to be toast, because actually they made huge strides with Gemini.
They are now
huge
professional,
strides. I mean, with their position today versus where they were with when ChatGPT came. I mean, Microsoft was behind the 8 ball, went through OpenAI, and suddenly commercialized it. But there's a huge change. But the point I'm making is that even the established platforms have these huge incumbent positions, and they're spending fortunes on $500 billion a year on AI capacity and energy and whatever. Even they are in a state of questioning their position.
Well, we are sadly running out of time today. The one major takeaway, which I really liked, was the search engine for your imagination, which Hannah said. That was if I could take anything away, that's my hope.
I appreciate that.
That was a lovely phrase. And thank you so much, and thank my audience. Cool. Thank you very much for joining us, and we've got another session in half an hour.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Martin.
Nice to see you.